so much for joining me here today as we go through our 2022-2023 homeschool curriculum selections. I am so excited about this year. I often feel like July or the end of July, August, whenever we're planning all the new things, it's like another January when we get to start fresh. And it's just a very fun time to be planning. I know everyone's getting their last minute selections in, getting everything organized. So I just wanted to give you all a peek at what we will be doing this school year for our 6th, 5th, 3rd, and 1st graders. Most of our learning is not grade specific. Everything that we can learn together, we do. And even within grades, we have different abilities and we come to know things and come to understand things at different rates. So you may see that not everything that the 6th grader does has the number 6 on the book, and that is just fine because we are in this learning journey for a whole lifetime. I will be walking you through all the things we do together in our morning time. I will be showing you the specifics for each child. First, let's start out with our morning basket plans. I think of the morning basket as the heartbeat of our homeschool. This is what I print off every year, filled in specifically for that year with everything we're going to be covering month by month in morning time. It looks a little something like this. Each month has every category underneath it, and I fill those in. So which Bible verse we'll be reading, the hymn we'll be singing, the folk song, the poem, the read aloud, our loop subject, and the habit we're working on. And this just makes it very nice for me as mama to have something that I can look at quickly and know that I have all the resources I need to cover the things that we're going to be going over that month. I actually have a link to this that you can get it through Dropbox. I have a blank one that you can fill out yourself, and I will also try to be providing this one that is already filled out. In the mornings, we begin with Bible time. We got this chronological one-year Bible. Now, I don't actually follow the days that are marked off in here. We read until we reach a certain time limit, or if there's a lot of discussion happening, we may cut that short and leave time for that discussion. So this is hopefully over the course of years in our home, we will have gotten through the entire Bible. Now, we used to also do Bible memory verses in morning time, but this summer, we began doing Bible memory verses and our catechism at supper time, and I am going to continue that. I find that if we try to squash too many things into our morning basket, we begin to just want to check things off the list. So this is one of the things I'm moving to the other end of the day, which is great because then we can do it with Dad. But we have these Truth and Grace memory books by Tom Askell. This is a box full of Simply Charlotte Mason scripture memory cards. I have fallen in love with this system because have you ever had that experience where you memorize scripture and then you don't review it for a long time? So it's there, but it's not there. Well, this is a great way to continue reviewing. But the idea is you begin with one memory verse. You put it behind daily. When that's memorized, you move it back and then you put a new memory verse behind daily. When that one's memorized, you'll move them both back. So everything keeps moving back, and eventually you'll have these filled up. So you're reviewing each thing you've memorized once a month, and then you'll continue adding up here. Next up is our hymn study. For us, this just means that we are singing one rich, beautiful hymn a month. We sing it each day. I make a YouTube playlist or a Spotify playlist with all of the hymns we're going to be singing, and I use Hymnary to get all of the music printed out. There's a place where you can easily get the PDF version of the sheet music, and then there's also a spot on Hymnary where you can learn a little bit more about the writer's life. Next up are the folk songs, and let me tell you guys, folk songs are a family favorite. This is one of the best parts of our homeschool day. We have so much fun with it. I go through lists and lists finding folk songs that I know my children will love. Ambleside Online is a great place to find quality folk songs. And then I print off the lyrics, make a Spotify playlist, and we all sing along once a day. Then we come to poetry, and I have a personal fondness for poetry. So I try to find poems that have beautiful language or make us laugh. We read through these once a day, and by the end of the month, everyone has it memorized. Now, because I cannot resist a good book list, I wanted to give you a peek at some of the books we'll be reading this year. We're going to read from the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankenweiler by E.L. Konigsberg. A Family Apart, which is an orphan train story by Joan Lowry Nixon. This is actually not the one we're reading. We have spent the last few years reading through this series, the Ralph Moody series. This year we're on Mary, Emma, and Company, which is the story of his mother. But if you have not picked this up, and especially if you have sons, these are wonderful books. Next, The Sign of the Beaver by Elizabeth George Spear. This one I picked up at the thrift store, and I had never heard of it, but Barbara Cooney's the illustrator. It's called The Kildee House. It's by Rutherford Montgomery, and it sounds kind of imaginative and fun, and I recently saw it on a book list of a friend of mine, so we're definitely going to give this one a try. This came highly recommended by a trusted homeschool mama friend. Carry On, Mr. Bowditch by Jean Lee Latham, and Because of Winn-Dixie by Kate DiCamillo. For December, we're going to be reading Jotham's Journey by Arnold Itriide. And for May, we're going to be reading a fun book called Gone Fishing by Mr. Wissinger. So those are our books for this year. All right, so now that we've looked at our hymns and our folk songs and poetry and the books we'll be reading, let's talk about those loop subjects. When I first heard about looping, it honestly stressed me out. I felt overwhelmed by the idea. But once I implemented it, it made things a lot easier, because then instead of feeling like I need to do Shakespeare all year long, I knew that for me, that was not a sustainable way to function. So I know that with the loop, I'm going to cover it one month and we're getting some exposure. I'm not going to do artist study every week of the year, but we are going to do some artist study throughout the year and get some of that exposure. So let's talk about some of these loop subjects. The first one we're going to go through is the artist studies. These have become a family favorite. We get our picture studies, these picture study portfolios from Simply Charlotte Mason. Because we are going to be in the Middle Ages, I tried to pick an artist that was, on the tail end of the Middle Ages. The great thing about these Simply Charlotte Mason picture portfolios is they come with this little booklet for you, Mama. And it tells you exactly how to carry out the picture study. If that's something you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. It also gives the life story of the artist and then breaks down each piece of art. And then the quality of the images is just so good. We've got this sturdy paper. It's not even paper. I don't know what to even call it. Can you hear it? So we'll be doing Van Eyck this year. 1 month in the fall, and then in the spring we're going to be doing Gainsborough, and I just chose him because I thought his paintings were very beautiful and interesting. That's just 2 picture studies a year, and we don't even do it every single day. We do it a couple times a week. It's enough to whet the appetite. It's enough to make them want more and they seek after it on their own, and it's enough, like I said, to just give them exposure to these great artists of the past. As I mentioned before, 1 month we will be listening to the audiobook Beowulf, and I'm sure that will spill over into quiet time and things like that. And then December is going to be Advent for the loop. And this is one of my favorite times of the school year. We keep math and language going at that time, but we drop history and science so that we can just dive into the goodness of the Christmas season. And this year, I am in the process of writing our own Advent curriculum, which I will try to make available to you. Hopefully, I'll get it done in the next couple of months. In January, when it's cold and we don't really want to be outside, I think it's the perfect time for Shakespeare. So we're going to be going through The Taming of the Shrew. I will probably go through an abridged children's version first so that we have an idea of what's going on, and then introduce the real language, the real play. And once again, this is nothing, we're not taking a big test at the end of it. You don't have to know everything he says. We're just enjoying the language and the story. I already mentioned our other artist that we'll be doing, and that is going to be taking place in March, Gainsborough. And for April, because we will have spent so much time in Europe through our Middle Ages studies, we're going to be doing some map work in geography of the European countries. Two more things that we do while we're all together after we've enjoyed our morning time, our history, and our science. This year for history, we are going to use the story of the world as a spine, and then I'm going to be primarily bringing in literature to teach us about the medieval world. I've not pulled all of that together, and I'll continue to do it throughout the year, but this gives me an idea about the historical timeline, because to be honest, I didn't spend a lot of time learning about the Middle Ages when I was in school, and so I'm not real familiar with those timelines. For science this year, we went with the Treehouse Nature Study. Now, this year I purchased the pre-printed, pre-bound copy. Now, if I were to do it again personally, because I choose so many of our poems and so much of our art study and all of that is already incorporated into what we've always done in school, I think I might take the less expensive route and get the digital copy so that I could print off the things that I really want to incorporate from the more nature and science perspective. But I think the kids are just going to love this. If you have ever experienced that one thing that you pick for the year that gets you really excited and just gives you the butterflies in your stomach, that's what this is for me this year. Now, I know that having gone through all of that all at once, it might seem like a lot. And you might be thinking, do you do school for like 8 hours a day? We definitely do not. We're usually done by lunchtime. From start to finish, our morning time, including the history and science, takes about an hour and a half. You have to remember that we're not doing every single one of those things every day, and we're not doing everything every month. So in our morning time, we just do Bible, hymn, folk song, poem. Each of those things just takes such a short amount of time. We do our read aloud. We usually read a chapter depending on how long the chapter is or how interested the children are in the story. We do our loop activity at least a couple of times a week, and then we talk about our habit. Now that all will take place within the course of about 45 minutes, depending on how interested they are in our loop subject and how into the story they are. It's not something that requires just time and time and time and time. And this is not something that the children do while sitting upright in desks. Usually there's Play-Doh, there may be some quiet building blocks, any kind of quiet toys, or felt, play felts. And as long as they're able to narrate to me what we've been discussing, and as long as they are keeping it in control, not arguing, being quiet, truly have an active ear listening, I am absolutely fine with them using their hands. Don't let that overwhelm you. If you've never done a morning time, it can be so simple and so fun. And honestly, if you want an introduction to a morning time, something like this Treehouse Nature Study would be a great introduction, because truly you have everything you would need for a morning time in here. There's lots of options when it comes to morning basket. You can do as much or as little as you want. You may start off one way and realize you need to take some things away. We've done that different years. Or you may start off small and then be adding to it over the year. We've also done that. Everything with homeschooling can be very fluid, and almost everything is fixable. If it's not working, it usually just takes a tweak here or there in order to get it to work for you and your family. Okay, now let's get on to our grade-specific curriculum. Let's start with our 6th grader. This year for language arts, we are using master books, language lessons for a living education. We have been so pleased with master books. It's just been a curriculum that the kids enjoy opening up. Now, there's never a curriculum that everyone wants to do all the time, but generally speaking, they have no complaints about this curriculum. One thing that I love about master books is that it comes with solid biblical truth. Ken Ham has a lot of products with master books. This is the 10-minute Bible journey, and so this is actually part of his language arts. I love having the Word of God woven into everything that we do, so that has been really great. And you'll see we don't have their math this year for our 6th grader, but even their math has biblical principles woven throughout. So wonderful. Now, as I said, we are not using master books for math this year for a sixth grader. We are going to continue on with what we got last year and didn't finish, which is the good and the beautiful. Now, one thing that I love about this are the video lessons, which are very practical and applicable to children. They usually give some examples, real world examples going along with the math problems. And I really enjoy having those video lessons when they come to the more complex math topics. And one thing that the good and the beautiful does, I think better than any other curriculum, is beautiful. It make their stuff really beautiful. It's just very pleasing to the eye. Because even in master books, I have found that some of the illustrations I find to just be a bit, just like a little cheesy, if you see what I mean. And that's just personal preference. What master books has that the good and the beautiful doesn't have for us is they support our worldview, our theology. I also wanted to mention with our sixth grader, we are going through this book called Changes, 7 Biblical Lessons to Make Sense of Puberty. I really love this book. It gives parents a great way to talk to their kids about the changes that are going to be happening in their bodies in the near future. Because my sixth grader is a boy, my husband will be going through this with him primarily. And with our fifth grader, I'll be going through it because she is a girl. So that is what our sixth grader is going to do. Let's move on to our fifth grader. All right, let's talk about what we're going to be doing with our 10-year-old. She is using master books as well, but she loves to write. So we are going to be doing master books Writing Strands, the first book. And this book, there's no frills about it and on the inside. And actually that's something that she really loves is page decorations. So she already went through and colored at least something on every page. It takes them through the writing process, the beginning stages of that. It says it focuses on skills such as sentence variety, paragraphing, and writing narratives. So I think she's really going to enjoy this. Now, once again, you'll notice we are doing Master Books Math for her. I love how Master Books ties a family story through all of their math books. You get to know Charlie and Charlotte in the kindergarten, early elementary books, and it just continues to build upon that as they adopt siblings and have trips to grandmother's house and go on trips. It's just really, really a fun way for them to do math. I find that my kids do not skip reading those stories, which I thought they might just, get to that place where they just want to get done. And it brings in that idea that math is applicable to our real lives. All right, let's talk about our third grader. This year for his reading and language arts, we are going to be primarily focusing on Explode the Code. We got 2.5, that was where he placed. And it's about a lot of phonics review and reinforcement. These are no frills books, but there's so much repetition and it really helps him with his fluency. So that is going to be what we spend most of our time on in language arts. If it comes down to it and he's feeling super inspired, we will continue on with Master Books Language Lessons for Living Education 2, which is more going to be grammar and things like that included, parts of speech, which I think are also wonderful. And we started on that last year. It just was a little bit too much for him in particular. He is more of our atypical learner. And so we often just try things. And if it doesn't work, we switch it up until we find what's really working and helping him to progress at his own pace. It's very possible that we'll get through this and then we'll go back to this Language Lessons for Living Education through Master Books. Another thing that he's working on is math. And in his math book from last year, he did not get all the way through. And so we will open that back up to where he left off, Master Books Math, level 2, and we will finish that up. So we will likely buy another math book halfway through the year, which we've done many times for our children. And that is just fine because, as I mentioned earlier, learning is a lifetime journey. So I don't think it's necessary to switch books just because we're entering into a new year. We just continue building upon what we've already learned. And lastly, our first grade curriculum. Once again, we are using Master Books, Language Lessons for a Living Education. And this I am really excited about. I think she's going to really enjoy, and it comes with these other books, once again, that incorporate biblical truth, which we will do with both my first and third grader. Probably all the kids, let's be honest, are going to hang out and want to listen to these books. The Door of Salvation, not too small at all. And this is kind of about a person's purpose, God's purpose for people. And Charlie and Trike in the Grand Canyon Adventure. This goes into details of the worldwide flood and Noah's Day, and so I think the kids are really going to enjoy all of these. Last year, we got The Good and the Beautiful Math K for our now first grader, and in the kindergarten years and before, we are very loosey-goosey. We focus mostly on play and habit training, and when they want to do school, great, and if they're just playing, great. So we did not get through all the way, but honestly, we will probably skip a good chunk of this book and put her to where she thinks that she's comfortable moving forward, and then we will switch her over to Master Books, I believe. What I did love about The Good and the Beautiful is this little manipulative box of math goodies that came with the curriculum. I think that is just so great. These are fun for them to use. They're a little bit different than other manipulatives I've seen with other math curriculums. And that wraps up all of the goodies that we have planned for this year. Now, I'm sure that as we get into stuff and sparks start flying and we start chasing those sparks, we'll pull in other resources and we might go off on some rabbit trails. But I love planning out our year because honestly, homeschooling has been almost a second chance at a fuller, more vibrant education for me, myself. And the children pick up on that as well. I hope that this is a great homeschool year for you. May the Lord bless you. May His goodness shower upon you as you seek to teach your children and walk in His ways. And remember that this calling on your life is so important, and I am here cheering you on all the way.